I'm Jackson Pierce, and this video is about the Vestal Virgins. The Vestal Virgins, or Vestals, were priestesses of the hearth goddess Vesta in ancient Rome. No one really knows exactly when they came about, but it was probably somewhere between 1717 BC and 1773 BC. Now, the Vestals, because they were priestesses, they were obviously all female, and they were selected before puberty. To become a Vestal, they had to vow 30 years of servitude to the goddess, which included a vow of celibacy. Now, after those 30 years were up, they could retire and marry and live relatively normal lives. They even got a pension from the state. When selected as a Vestal, a girl was taken away from her parents and taken to the goddess Vesta's temple. From the moment she entered the temple, she was under the goddess's protection and she began her service. She would spend the next 30 years living in the House of Vestals, which was essentially like a dormitory behind the temple where all the Vestals lived. The job of the Vestals was to keep the sacred fire of the goddess Vesta burning and to sort of sometimes collect water from a sacred spring, and they had a lot of other Vesta-related duties that they kind of attended to. And more importantly, perhaps, the Vestals were in charge of the wills and testaments of some of Rome's most important citizens, including Caesar and Mark Antony. They were also trusted with treaties and formal documents and sacred relics. And even more impressively, the Vestals were allowed to vote, own property, and make a will, which were rights not extended to most Roman women. They could also free prisoners and slaves by touching them, and if you were on your way to execution and you saw a Vestal Virgin, then you were immediately pardoned. And their carriage got their right away when they were riding around in Rome, which, as somebody who drives around in Atlanta a lot, I think is pretty fantastic. Seriously though, the Vestals, because they were free of the obligation to marry and bear children, were some of the most socially and politically powerful women in ancient Rome. There were some downsides. If they let the sacred fire go out, then they got whipped. And if they had sex and broke that vow of celibacy, then things got really, really complicated. See, ancient rules dictated that you could never spill a Vestal's blood, so if she had sex, you couldn't just, and kill her. So what they would do is they would go outside of town and they would dig a pit, and then they would put the Vestal in the pit with some water and some food, and then they would cover the top of the pit. And that way, she would eventually die of starvation, and that way they weren't killing her, it was just the lack of food and water in the pit that really did her in. I don't really know, I guess that helped them sleep at night or something. I don't know, it seems like they're still killing her to me. Various Vestals were punished in such a manner, and some probably legitimately did have sex, and others were probably just being used as scapegoats when Rome fell on hard times. One of the most famous Vestals was Tuccia. When Tuccia was accused of losing her virginity, she prayed to the goddess Vesta to allow her to carry water in a sieve from the river all the way back to the temple to prove her innocence. Which, I don't know how many of you have ever made spaghetti, but carrying water in this thing is not easy. Well done, Tuccia. Don't know how you did it, but well done. All in all, the Vestals and the stories that surround them are really fantastic. They were some of the most powerful women in Rome at the time, and they were the only female priest in Rome's religious system. They were badasses, and they knew some secrets about sieves. Yeah. I think this one looks like a cat when I hold it this way. I think I have too much time on my hands too. All right, thank you for watching, and I will see you next time.